The New York Knicks came back from a 30-point deficit in the finals, which is interesting because that's the exact percentage the mayor of New York City is raising the rents on the residents of these buildings behind me.
Control the price of something people need, and eventually there's less of it. New York City just froze rent on 1 million stabilized apartments. And I said we give it its own video. If your rent is $1,000 a month, here's what that freeze actually saves you compared to a normal year. About $20. That's it, enough for a couple of burritos. And here's what it might cost you instead. Your landlord's insurance bill doesn't freeze. The water rate doesn't freeze. It just went up 6% in New York. Property taxes don't freeze. The cost of fixing a boiler or a roof or an elevator doesn't freeze. This is the oldest story in economics, and it never changes no matter where you run the experiment. Control the price of something people need, and eventually there's less of it because the math stops working and math doesn't care about your politics. My name is Kelly Jackson. This is Still Not Canceled, where we question everything, especially the narrative. I want to play this clip for you really quickly. Again, I've got Cash Jordan and his amazing YouTube channel, and listen to what he has to say here.
So here's the other thing nobody's talking about with rent freezes in New York. Right now, landlords are getting zero. Is that historic? Yes. But every other time when there has been any of these votes on what the rents are in these regulated apartments, these votes have always wound up with landlords getting a 2% raise here, a 3% raise here. And we're talking about apartments that are $800 a month, $500 a month. Some are $1,000 a month. So if your rent's $1,000 a month, and you get hit with a 2% increase, you can get yourself a couple Chipotle burritos a month extra. That's not affordability. Things haven't gotten magically more affordable for people in New York because there's a 0% rent increase. If your rent's $1,000 and it goes up to $1,020, it's already super affordable. Talk to the guy paying $5,000 a month about affordability. And remember, some of the people living in these rent-stabilized homes are making six-figure incomes. The mayor himself used to live in a rent-stabilized home. I used to live in a rent-stabilized home. People have these apartments who don't need frozen rent.
Sit with that for a second, because it's the whole story in one number. A typical year without any freeze at all, a rent-stabilized tenant might see a 2% increase. On a $1,000 apartment, that's $20 a month, a couple of burritos, like he said. That's the entire size of the crisis this freeze claims to solve. Meanwhile, the buildings themselves are being asked to eat every other rising cost with zero additional revenue for 2 straight years. The first time in the history of this program that's ever happened. $20 a month isn't a rescue. It's a press release with a number attached to it, and the bill for the difference doesn't disappear. It just moves somewhere you're not looking at. And imagine multiplying that $20 a month by hundreds, even thousands. It's that small $20 a month that pay the bills for all of the things that those landlords are still going to be responsible for taking care of.
New York's rents are now frozen, and here's what happens next.
He made a campaign promise, and he delivered. Here's what worries me. When you freeze rent, you don't freeze anything else.
Oh, yeah?
You don't freeze everything else, that's for sure. You don't freeze insurance. You don't freeze water bills. You don't freeze labor costs. You don't freeze the price of replacing a boiler, fixing a roof, or repairing an elevator. And you definitely don't freeze property taxes.
Oh.
Those bills keep going up.
Oh.
So what happens? Well, for a lot of small landlords, not giant corporations, but the immigrant family that owns a 6-family building or the retired couple that owns an apartment house, they have to make impossible choices.
Oh, like what?
Do they postpone repairs?
Oh.
Do they leave apartments vacant because they can't afford to renovate them? Or do they sell? Eventually,
who would buy?
Fewer apartments are available. And when supply goes down, guess what happens? Market rate rents go up.
Oh, so rents are going to go up. And the city itself owns a building where Mayor Mamdani's the landlord. And guess what's happening over there?
The New York Knicks came back from a 30-point deficit in the finals, which is interesting because that's the exact percentage the mayor of New York City is raising the rents on the residents of these buildings behind me. So what's going on? This is Tracy Towers in the Bronx. It's an 871-unit Mitchell-Lama project built with the help of government to provide affordable middle-class housing. And when I say help, I mean a lot of help.
Here's what actually happens when you freeze the price of something without freezing anything that goes into producing it. Insurance goes up. Water goes up. The city's own water board just approved a 6% hike effective this month, regardless of whether your rent is frozen or not. Property taxes on these buildings have climbed roughly 16% just since 2020. None of that pauses because the mayor held a press conference. So landlords make the only choices left to them: delay the repair, leave the unit empty, or eventually sell. And Tracy Towers, the building in that clip, is a preview of where this goes. It's a city-connected Mitchell-Lama project in the Bronx that's reportedly delinquent on its own mortgage, and it's facing a roughly 30% increase of its own, phased in over the next few years, while privately owned rent-stabilized buildings a few blocks away get a freeze. The city already had to step in to cover repairs there. That's not a hypothetical about what happens when the government owns more of this housing directly. That's what's happening right now in a building the government already owns. Before the vote, Christina Smith, the landlord side representative on the actual rent guidelines board, the one that was populated with people hand-selected by Mamdani, the body that's supposed to independently weigh this decision, resigned. Not after, before. And she didn't go quietly. Her own words: this year's RGB order was decided last year on the campaign trail. In other words, the Rent Guidelines Board has stopped being a fact-finding body. That's not a landlord complaining about profits. That's the person whose entire job was to independently evaluate this policy, telling you the evaluation was theater. Here's the pattern, and it's not unique to New York. You can cap the price of a thing people need: bread, gasoline, apartments, doesn't matter. And for a little while, it looks like a win. Then the people who supply that thing stop being able to afford to keep supplying it at the same quality or quantity, so they supply less of it. Less maintenance, fewer units renovated, fewer new buildings. Because why would anyone build more of the one asset the government just told you it can make worthless whenever it's politically convenient? That's not a right-wing talking point. It's the single most consistent finding in economics on rent control going back decades in city after city, country after country. Mamdani's freeze didn't repeal that pattern. It just delayed the bill and mailed it to the version of New York that shows up in a year or two. The one with more vacant, crumbling units, fewer new apartments built, and a mayor who will have moved on to the next press conference by the time anyone can prove where the $20 actually went. $20 a month. That's the entire visible benefit of a policy that a sitting board member says was decided before the hearings even started, that ignores every other rising cost a landlord actually faces, and that's already showing up in a government-linked building that can't make its own numbers work. This is what socialism always produces when it touches something people genuinely need. Not abundance, not fairness, a shortage dressed up as a win with the real cost pushed far enough down the road that nobody has to answer for it on camera. If you're into this kind of under-the-radar reporting, the stuff the bigger outlets won't touch or won't connect the dots on, hit like and subscribe and join this community. I would love to have you as one of my first 100 subscribers. That's how this channel keeps digging. Comment below with what you want me to dig into next. I read every one of those comments. My name is Kelly Jackson. This is Still Not Canceled, where we question everything, especially the narrative. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.